Good evening, everyone. I, Dr. Faiza, on behalf of R&D Cell of Government SPMR College of Commerce Jammu and Cape Comorin Trust India, welcome you all to the sixth day of 1 week International Virtual Faculty Development Program on the topic Research Methods and Techniques for Multidisciplinary Research Designs. It is a moment of great pride for the organizing team that today we have entered into the sixth day of this FDP. I extend my warm welcome to our worthy principal, Dr. Surinder Kumar, under the able guidance of whom we, as a team, has turned this plan into an action. I would also like to welcome Dr. Pooja, Coordinator RDC, and Professor Deepshika Sharma, Organizing Secretary of the program, who has been a source of motivation every time in order to achieve a unified goal. Now it is my honor to welcome the resource persons for today's session. We have Dr. Utkarsh K. Mishra and Professor Dr. Prateek Rajan Mungekar. Sir, I welcome you both as you spared your valuable time in order to enlighten us with the various aspects of research. Now, our first resource person, Dr. Utkarsh K. Mishra. Sir is working as an assistant professor at DLNU Jabalpur. Sir has worked as assistant registrar in Supreme Court of India on deputation from year 21-22. Sir is an alumnus of NLU Odisha and recipient of awards like Nani A. Palkiwala Memorial Gold Medal and Milan Kumar Banerjee Gold Medal for academic excellence in postgraduate studies. Sir is having numerous achievements into his credit and time falls short for counting them. So without further delay, let us invite Dr. Utkarsh for the first technical session. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Faiza. Am I audible to
Yes,
everyone?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, just uh, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to speak in this very good, well planned session. And I also like to welcome Professor Dr. Prateek, who is sharing this session with me. Hello, sir. And just one small correction: I am still uh, yet to get the recognition as a doctorate. I'm yet to get that degree. So I would like you to address me as Utkarsh, and I would be fine by it.
Actually, I read, sir, regarding your PhD, so I thought that is
Yes.
completed.
Yeah, it's almost there, but I will be honest because we are doing a session on research, and I think honesty is the best policy in research. So, yeah. Anyway, in this case, the session that I am going to address today is all about the tools of data collection that we as researchers we venture into. And in fact, if I have to define why data is important and pertinent for any research, I think by now almost everybody must understand that data is the backbone of every research, be it any kind of data. If you are referring to primary data or secondary data, when you talk about primary data, I don't know whether we have some students also joining this FDP as research associates or not. So for those, I'll just like to clarify as to what is the difference between primary data and secondary data and why they're relevant, and then I'll move ahead. When you talk about data as such, it can come to you in two types of forms, mainly as one is the primary data, which is the first hand data which you get by your own hard work and by your own collection. You need not look into books or other sort of literatures or online databases or any sorts of other available material already which is there in public, and which we get through armchair research or doctrinal research. So all of that is not a primary data. All of that comes under secondary data. So the data which we get through our first hand experience, for example, if you go to a field, if you go to any institution, if you go to any place and you talk to people and you ask questions, you collect information by your own self, that becomes your own data, that becomes a data collected by you, and hence that is called a primary data. Whereas secondary data is available in it's already available in public domain for everybody to explore. So it's not, it's only that I or somebody as a researcher is only, maybe able to tap the potential of that secondary data and use that secondary data to our utmost advantage. So that's how we differentiate between primary data and secondary data. But to begin with, I think, when we conduct any sort of research, be it in terms of social sciences or in law or in any other field, data becomes the background of any sort of research. Hence, it also becomes very important to understand as to how to collect data, you know, because, when a research is conducted, it has to be very systematic, it has to be based on certain principles, and since it is based on certain principles, it is obviously very much an imperative, it's a given that we must also understand the various schools of thought which allow us to further understand what are the different methods of data collection. So in today's session, what I'm going to do is talk about the different methods of data collection, or you can call them tools of data collection as well. And I hope I'll be able to also answer the questions in the last 5 7 minutes of the session also. So I'll be keeping last 5 7 minutes of the session for any question answers that the participants may have. uh, to begin with, I will say that, and I will also like to inform you that my background is law, but I believe that law is not a separate field from social sciences. It is very much akin to social sciences. So, what I speak today is not only relevant for people who are interested in the field of law and policy, but also it is relevant for the field of for those working in social sciences. And during my experience as an assistant registrar research uh, at the Supreme Court of India, it was, and I worked there for an year or so, and it was a journey where I had to actually, on everyday basis, work uh, on both the kinds of data, be it primary data or secondary data, and also develop certain principles and certain rules, follow certain rules in order to properly collect them so that they are validated. And hence, on the basis of that learning, I am doing this session today. The very first kind of the tool, you can say, or method of data collection, you can say, is the idea of social surveys. It's the idea of social surveys, and social surveys are relevant for almost all the branches of research. In a, it's a just like the name indicates, a survey is nothing but a process in which you interact with people, you interact with institutions, you interact with the objects of your research, or you can say respondents of your research, ask them different types of questions, you ask them their feelings, their attitudes, and on the basis of their answers you try to cull out certain conclusions, not only about their feelings but maybe possibly about the behavior. But also, if it's an institution, then you may be studying the nature of the institution, functioning of the institution, or let's say any critical analysis that you would be wanting to do about that institution or set of people. In that case, I would say that social surveys can be broadly divided into two types of surveys which are popular in any sort of research, especially social sciences research and the researchers connected with law. One is called interview method of data collection under social surveys, and the other one is called the questionnaire method of social surveys under the data collection method. Obviously, as the name indicates, if you see, when we talk about interview method, interviews are conversations basically. And in the best idea, in fact, the basic logic about interviews is that you get to talk to your respondents very freely. You let them express their feelings, you let them express their ideas, and that becomes a very, very important data for your research. Because many a times when we enter into, and obviously I'm talking about these tools of data collection in the context of primary data, I will come to secondary data research as well. But since that is, I think, quite simple, I will come to that towards the end of the session. But what I'm talking as of now is all about primary data collection tools. So, in which I talked about the first method is social surveys, within which you further divided into interviews and questionnaires. So, as I said, that interview is more, it involves more of interpersonal skills. So, depending upon which person do you want to interview, which institution you want to visit, how you want to interview that person or any institutional officer, you have to also uh, I mean you have to enter into a shoe of that person, and you have to develop those skills of interpersonal communication with that interviewer, develop that sort of confidence with the respondent, and then interview that particular person. The benefit of an interview is, as I said, it's a conversation, so it allows free flow of information. So you may ask any sort of question from the respondent. But first of all, the basic essence of interview is that you make the respondent very comfortable. And in fact, and he should be comfortable to an extent that he almost starts reposing his trust in you. That way, you get the best out of that sort of interview. So interviews are very, very potential methods of data collection. Even in interviews, for example, all of us watch television and we see, these um news channels and news anchors anchoring and then having debates with some 5 6 people. They are not proper methods of data collection, they are just debates. So always remember, when you enter into an interview sort of method of data collection, you cannot be debating with the respondent. That's the first most important ethical principle involved in the interview method of data collection. You cannot be letting the respondent come in under that sort of impression that the interviewer may not be happy with your response. That's the psychology of that's how the psychology of the interview should be. In fact, I would also like to mention here to all those interested persons who are listening to this session that data collection is very much about understanding human psychology as well. So you may go to a field, for example, if you want to conduct a prison research in prisons, you're working on prison reforms, you want to study the behavior of prison inmates, which is a very popular kind of a research, and numerous researches have been done on prisons. You cannot be entering into a dialogue with prison inmates in such a manner that prison inmates become very insecure of expressing their feelings, very insecure of expressing their opinions. So there has to be a very professional camaraderie which has to be established between the interviewer and the respondent. That actually connects both the interviewer and the respondent, and that allows the free flow of emotions, thoughts, expressions, beliefs, and that's how you get the most relevant data that is possible for your research. In interviews also, there are different ways of conducting interviews. It's not always necessary to have very formal interviews. You can have structured interviews as well as unstructured interviews. So when you go for unstructured interviews, you actually ask very open-ended questions. I can say that you haven't prepared any set of questions. There is no proper order of questions. It's just that you allow the other person, you allow the respondent. And when I say respondent, I mean to refer it to the object of the research. That respondent can be any person from any institution, or it can be any person from any public, or any category of any living being who you want to understand, or whose who is the object of your research. So in case of unstructured interview, when I say unstructured interview, you let the other person speak freely without any sort of just like we say that there is a word limit of answering a question. So you do not put limits on answering the questions. You do not put any straight jacketed formula for carving out the questions. There is no set order of the questions. It's more free flow of information. So it's more informal communication. Hence, unstructured interviews also prove to be very beneficial because many a times we go to certain respondent for seeking only particular set of information, but we end up getting more information than we require. And sometimes that more information helps us in also it's a valuable addition to our research. So that's the beauty of unstructured interviews. But when you talk about structured interviews, I think structured interviews are those interviews which are more professional and which are more, you can say there is a proper set of questions which are involved, wherein you are already prepared with those set of questions, and you have a mindset that you will be asking the respondent, let's say, these 10 questions or 15 questions. In that case, you may also let the respondent know that you have prepared 10 to 15 questions, so that the respondent also is in that mood that he should be answering those 10, 15 questions properly. If you do not let the other person know that how many questions you are going to ask, the person may get bored out of your questions and may start answering the questions dishonestly also. So that's the beauty of structured interviews. Usually, structured interviews are the kind of researches that have happened in social sciences and in law. Structured interviews have been asked from very specific categories of people, for example, students, or for examples, certain professionals like advocates or teachers, because they belong to same category of persons. Whereas we go for unstructured interviews when we are interviewing a person who may be renowned in that field of research, and we want his opinion on the subject matter, so that there is no constraint of answering questions, so that you do not let that respectable respondent feel that he's uh, in shackles of that the set number of questions. So that's why you have to actually pick it up for your research as to what kind of interview you want to create. And if it is you should be able to understand the difference between a structured interview and an unstructured interview, but you should create structured or unstructured interview on the basis of the type of object or the type of respondent that you have selected for your research. Now, how you select your respondent and everything, obviously respondents you cannot be interviewing one person out of 100 or 500 population. So you have to interview certain number of people so that the information that you get is representative of that humongous population. For that, we refer to a technique called sampling technique, I think, which is definitely a subject matter of a separate proper session, and which, if the time permits, I will definitely speak about sampling as well. But sampling is a technique by which you create your respondent, you create your sample size, and that sample size is representative of the universe, or you can say the total population, the representative of which data you want to actually record in your research. So that's about the interview method of data collection, which is part of the first type of tool within the larger domain of social surveys. The second type of social survey is actually, as I said, is questionnaire method. Questionnaire methods are more convenient because you do not have to uh, actually spend too much of your time interviewing people. You do not have to indulge in emotions with the people. You do not have to indulge in conversations with people. It definitely is not at all time consuming, and you just have to print it. Questionnaires are usually in the form of set form of questions on a piece of paper, and you circulate those questionnaires to the set of respondents that you have examined for yourself on the basis of the sampling technique, the universe, the sample that you have chosen from the bigger universe, the bigger population. So usually in cases of uh, the questionnaire method of social surveys, it's already the number of questions are same for every respondent, which may not be in the case of interviews. So for example, if I am interviewing 5 people, 5 reputed academicians in the field of law relating to my subject of research, I might be, asking all those 5 persons some different questions from each other. That way, I get a diversity in terms of opinion. But it is not possible in case of questionnaires. That is one of the major restraints of questionnaire method, that you ask a set number of questions, and you distribute those questionnaires to a category of persons. It can be students, it can be obviously a category of people like teachers or social workers or whatsoever. But there is one very huge limitation with questionnaires, is that sometimes the respondents may not be willing to answer your questionnaire. So it becomes very relevant to draft a questionnaire in a very proper format, you know. And you cannot be drafting very boring questions, you cannot be drafting questions which are very complex to understand. And obviously one very huge limitation of a questionnaire method is that it does assume that the respondent is an educated person. I mean, that's the biggest limitation of this questionnaire method. Because the moment you write down your questions, you are assuming that the respondent will be able to read, write, and obviously understand your question. Please excuse me for a minute. Sorry, I have a sore throat, that's why. So you see that it depends upon you as a researcher and the kind of respondents that you have chosen for your research, that you choose a particular type of data collection tool. So, as I said, when you talk about social surveys, you can either go for interviews or you can go for questionnaire methods. If you go for interviews, it may not always be necessary that your respondent is an educated person. And when I say educated here, I mean literate, not educated in that sense. So, because even if you speak to that person in any colloquial language also or any local language also, that person would be able to express his opinion on a government policy. That is also a relevant data for you as a researcher. But that is one sort of limitation with questionnaire method, because there you are distributing questions. That too, there are set number of questions, and it does demand that the other person should be able to read and write. So obviously you see that every sort of tool of data collection has a limitation of its own. And as a researcher, one should choose a tool depending upon the requirements of its research. Is one very, very important thing that we as researchers forget, and which I learned during my term as registrar in the Supreme Court, was that we tend to forget, as I just mentioned, that we tend to forget the psychology of human beings and psychology of people working in institutions, busy people, and people sitting in higher offices who are we are interviewing. Because many a times uh, we just draft questions in a very technical fashion, because as an interviewer you have to first understand the person in order to then get the information out of him. If the person has a kind of a behavior or has a kind of an attitude, you have to create an atmosphere in such a fashion that the person becomes comfortable in answering your questions. So usually the technique which is suggested in drafting questionnaires or in case of interviews is also that you first ask open-ended questions and then go on to ask close-ended questions. When I say open-ended questions, I mean questions which allow the respondent to speak freely, to express their opinion, and there is no constraint on the limit, so called, of the words that they may use in answering the question. It also kind of builds a trust with the respondent, that you are giving an importance to the respondent to speak to speak his mind. So I think this one technique which all the researchers should learn, that you should first start with open ended questions, because that allows the respondents space to breathe, to calm down, to repose trust in you as a researcher, and to start speaking freely. Slowly and slowly, you just like have. I think everybody must have seen a funnel, and it's like a funneling technique that we do, and it's most famously known as a funneling technique. So it's like a funnel that you filter down your questions. You first ask those broad questions, and then you keep on funneling it down to very specific small sort of questions, and then other questions relating to details of name, age, sex, gender, date of birth, date of whatsoever, that those questions should always be asked in the end, should never be asked in the beginning. That's one very ethical rule, and in fact, if not ethical, you can say it's a very smart rule of asking questions both in interviews as well as in questionnaires. Obviously, in interviews, we tend to introduce the public about the speaker, but that is an interview that we see on television. But for the purpose of your data collection, it's not always necessary to ask the interviewer first about his own details. Interviewer may, the person sitting in front of you, the respondent may not be always comfortable. So this is one set of uh, tool of data collection which comes under the popular models of data collection, that are social surveys. Summing up social surveys, as I said, social surveys can be interviews. They can be composed of interviews. They can be composed of questionnaires. The interviews can be structured as well as unstructured. The third point, as I stated, was that you need to understand the psychology of the respondents. Number four, the way, the fashion in which you structure your question also has a huge impact on the kind of data that you will get. Hence, it's always important to ask broader questions first, wider questions first, and then come down to small questions, specific questions, and opinion-based questions should always be asked first. So that's all about your interview method, sorry, the social survey method of data collection. That's the larger category, social surveys. The second and a very interesting method of data collection in almost all kinds of research, especially social sciences, is observation method. So if I can, maybe I'll write in the chat box also for those, but I think I'm not allowed to write in the chat box. But it's okay. I'm speaking right now. As I said, we are discussing two broad methods. One is social survey, and the second one is observation method. Under the observation method, as the name indicates, you basically observe, and that's how you collect your data. But then it's not very simple as it is. Many a times, now the very first question is, why do we at all need a method like an observation method when we have something called interview method and questionnaire method, and under the larger category of social surveys? The reason is that many a times we might be willing to venture into a kind of a research which is very much indigenous, which is uh, which is catering to a population which may not be open to giving their personal information. For example, tribals. So if somebody is studying tribals, the first very biggest limitation is that they may not understand your language, okay, and they have their own local language which you may not understand. So obviously you cannot enter into communications with them. Second is that because they live like a community and they live like an indigenous protected community, they do see us as foreigners, as aliens, and they may not be willing to, answer our questions and to cooperate with our research. And it's not only the case with tribals. I mean, it's not a very, I'm not giving a generalization with all sorts of tribal population. I mean, if you visit the tribals of Northeast, they will be more open to, helping you out in research. If you visit tribals of the Central India, I mean, you may face a problem, because I have done some sort of tribal research, and I do believe that there is a diversity in tribals as well. And so it depends upon in which area of tribals you are catering your research to. So that's one thing. Second thing is that many a times you may be wanting to study the behavioral patterns of a particular community of people, their culture, their customs, which may not, come to you as an information by just asking questions. So then there is a, method of data collection which is popularly called observation method, which has been developed, wherein the researcher himself, becomes, indulges, the researcher himself goes to that community, goes to that area, observes the people, their behavior, their expressions, their feelings, their culture, their customs, and on the basis of observation he records his data. So that's a very interesting way of data collection. Obviously, there are so many disadvantages, which, or if not disadvantages, you can say there are, you can say externalities associated with this sort of data collection, that the researcher may incur so much of costs in traveling. Then there might be security issues also. So there are risks associated with this sort of research, but then if you are prepared and you have done it once or twice, it becomes very easy for you as a researcher. But within this observation method of research, there are two further kinds of observation method, or you can say the observation method of data collection has been divided into two further kinds of data collection. One is called participant observation research, while the other is called the non-participant observation research. When you talk about participant observation, as the name indicates, the researcher himself becomes a participant in their culture, in their customs, in their community. So, if I, as a researcher, would want to go to the tribals of Chhattisgarh and would want to study the tribal population of central India and would want to study them very closely, I may adopt a participant observation research wherein I would behave like them. I would adopt their culture. I would adopt their ways. I will try to talk like them. And that's how I identify with them. So, participant observation research lets you identify yourself with their community. And that's the connecting link between yourself and your respondents. The moment you start connecting with them directly, you actively engage in their daily lives, you listen to their stories, you tell your own stories to them, they start identifying them with yourself, and you start identifying yourself with them. That's how there is no further distinction between them as a community and you as a researcher. There you get a first hand data, which is one of the most authentic data of all that can ever be possibly in such kind of a context. So a successful research in such indigenous settings can be done by means of participant observation. But for being a participant, when I say participant, I mean to say that you have to adapt and adopt their culture, their values for that period of time, and you have to in fact behave, show those behavioral patterns just like them. But then it becomes very difficult at times also, because initially when you enter a particular village or a tribal area and you try to show them that you are part of their community, or if you try to show them that you understand their feeling, their attributes and expressions and all of that, initially you may not face that sort of acceptance from their side. So it all depends upon how you behave as a researcher. It's a very powerful yet very challenging way of data collection. The second type of observation method is a non-participant observation method. In case of non-participant observation method, I think, as the name very clearly indicates, you do not actively, uh, create that sort of direct link or direct bond with the community at large. You go to their community, you observe them simply, but you do not adopt or adapt to their culture, their customs, and you do not actively talk to them. So, just like in participant observation, you actually share your own stories as if your story has become their story and their story has become your story. It becomes that sort of a scenario in participant observation. But in a non participant observation, it's almost about, it's just about observing, simpliciter as it is. That's it. You do not indulge into so many communications with them. You do not indulge into adopting and adapting to their culture, their settings and environment. You just be there and you observe and you note your findings. That's it. However, sometimes it is very good to be a non-participant observant, because many times such settings, indigenous settings, may not be very hospitable for researchers. And there, the tribals or any other people, for example, it's not just tribals, it's also any category of persons. For example, you want to study, let's say, I've already given the example of prisons. There can be another best examples of, let's say, insanes, or you can say, or the people who we uh, unfortunately call as mad people. If you want to study an insane the an institution which, it's not a normal hospital, it's a mental institution, so you want to study mental patients. So if you are entering a mental hospital, obviously behaving and like a mental patient, behaving like an insane at times, and becoming part of their setting and surrounding may become very challenging. Because I have been to a mental institution, visited as a researcher, but and when I visited it as a researcher, and I found that it's not very easy to become a participant in that setting, because even though you would be willing to act and behave like a mental in front of them, but then they don't know, they still think that if you are one of their kind, so they will behave in their own fashion. Sometimes they will try to hurt you also, and that is very unintentional. Sometimes they will try to play with you, that's also very unintentional. But then it becomes difficult for the researcher, because researcher is only acting, he has not become like that. So it depends upon what kind of setting it is, what kind of situation it is. Sometimes it is best to be a non participant observant and adopt a non participant observation method, because you may not uh, become like the respondents. And if your acting, or you can say your becoming, fails, then you will never be successful in getting the right kind of data, because then the respondent starts behaving in a proper fashion. They understand that you are an outsider, and they start behaving differently, so you will never get a right data. So that's the I think the peculiarity of observation method. So I think what I'll suggest the researchers is, even I consider myself still as a researcher and as a learner, I suggest most the researchers that one should choose a kind of data collection, be it social survey, or be it as I said, the observation method, depending upon the kind of research and the requirements of your research. Otherwise, the whole purpose gets futile if you just go it in very technical terms. Now, having talked about social surveys and observation method, these two methods of data collection are mainly about they are mainly about primary data collection. When you are not collecting data from books and sources, and you know and you are directly entering into a field, you are directly going on the field and getting a first hand data. There you explore yourself, and you choose either social surveys or observation method. And with this kind of primary data collection tool, the one of the very biggest limitation is that many a times we, let's say, as I gave you the example of a mental institute or a mental institution, we go to a mental hospital, and we see that, let's say, there are 500 mental patients, but because of the paucity of time, paucity of resources, money, and other sort of resources, we decide that we should choose a sample size of 100 out of 500. That's our universe. So universe is 500, and we still choose 100, or maximum 150, many times 200, not more than that. The limitation of that sort of uh, primary database research is that even though technically you satisfy yourself that asking 100 people or 200 mental patients questions is sufficient a data which represents the feelings and attributes of 500 people. We technically satisfy ourselves by doing all that sort of sample size and universe, but actually ethically, that is a very that's not a very ethical position to take, it's not very good to make generalizations on the basis of uh, only a sample size of 100 uh, when the universe is of 500. So I think because obviously in case of field studies, in case of primary database researches, you cannot collect data from all the respondents of the universe. It's not possible. If you're studying, let's say, teachers, if you're studying advocates, you cannot take data from all of them. And when you cannot take data from all of them, it becomes very difficult to generalize something for all of them. So for our convenience, we tend to create that sort of sample size calculation, and then we say that okay, we have interviewed 100 out of 500 and that data is representative of it. I think that's the biggest limitation of field research and the primary data collection methods, be it social surveys or observation method. And I think that should be done with a huge sense of moral responsibility. Now, coming to the data collection with respect to secondary data, I think when you come to secondary data, it's the most easiest way of collection. And nowadays, you have different tools of data collection in secondary data. Secondary data, as I said, it's a data which is available in books, in journals. In it's based on doctrinal research, something which you research on the basis of armchair research. You can just simply sit on your laptop and conduct research on your laptop by utilizing n number of resources. So that sort of data is a secondary data. More importantly, it's not the first hand data. So for example, if let's say there is an organization called Cuts International, and that organization is working in the field of trade, environment, and consumer affairs. Now that Cuts International went on to certain fields, certain indigenous communities, collected the data, and they published their report. That report gets available in the public domain. So you may download that report and get the data, but that will ultimately be called as secondary data for you as a researcher. So that is the secondary data, and it's the most easiest form of data that we get in our researches, be it for social sciences or for law. And the in today's times, I think if I want to speak about the modern tools of data collection for secondary data researches, is the usage of electronic databases. I don't know how many few of the participants are really aware of it, but electronic databases have become the modern tools of secondary data collection in today's times, because you may not have access to every book which is available in physical mode, obviously, because even if you visit certain libraries, you have limited amount of books. Similarly, you may not have access to foreign authors in your own Indian jurisdiction. So learning about electronic databases becomes very, very important for researchers of all kinds. I may not be knowing about electronic databases in the field of uh, science, but for specifically for law and social sciences, there are so many electronic databases like SCC Online, Hain Online, JSTOR. JSTOR is also a very good electronic database for social sciences people. And then Manupatra is there, LexisNexis is there. So nowadays there is a trend that most of these big publishing houses like SCC Online, which is actually uh, a conjoint this thing operation of Eastern Book Company, they are creating their own database, and it is now on very not so very costly terms. It is available for people, and their books, all the cases decided by Supreme Court or high courts or lower courts, articles on different topics of law and social sciences, they're available in those kinds of electronic databases. But it becomes very important. Having said that, it becomes very important to actually know to how to use these databases, because it's not very simple to use these databases. It's not akin to a Google research. So on Google we can type anything and we get n number of resources, but in databases it doesn't actually work like that. So there is a proper training required for using a database, electronic database. So that is one limitation with using electronic databases as secondary form of research. With secondary form of research, or you can say the secondary database research, the I can say the tools of data collection may vary. You can look into books, you can look into journals, you can look into encyclopedias, you can look into laws, regulations, policies, and all of them can be found at one place. As I said, they are electronic databases. But one limitation with secondary database research is that you do not tend to many a times, because of your internet connection or because of your limited connectivity of electronic database, you may not get all the information. It's a limited information which is supplied. So again, you see that as I discussed, be it the case of primary data collection method or be it the case of secondary data collection method, it there are limitations in both the kinds of tools. It really depends upon, you have to, as a researcher, you have to first train yourself and understand. For example, in primary data, you need to understand the psychology of the respondents. In case of secondary database research, you need to understand the psychology of the very object of secondary data. For example, electronic database, how it operates. So I think that becomes very, very important in understanding the various tools of data collection. With this, I would like to end my speaking, and I would open the floor for all sort of questions. Any questions, please? If somebody is willing, that you can also maybe comment upon how you felt the session was, and I would be happy to see my reviews as well.
Participants, you can please go ahead and please feel comfortable and ask if you have any query or doubt, or would you like to have some give some suggestion, or would like to take some suggestion from sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Ah, okay, sir. Sir, it was a wonderful session. We got to know about the how to take the data, what are the different types of collecting data and all. The thing is that so this data collection mainly it will be mainly of quantitative and qualitative, no, sir.
Yeah.
That selection. So, sir, in qualitative method, can we go with this questionnaire method, or else we'll be going only with interview method?
Yes, yes. Even for Sajida, it's
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yes. So I think, yes, your question is very good, and I truly agree that even for qualitative data, you can go for questionnaire method, because questionnaire method also, it's, see, the only difference between questionnaire and interview is the methodology of putting the questions. In interview, you let it freely flow between yourself and the respondent. It's just that in questionnaire you already put down the questions, so your quality, it's actually both the qualitative as well as sometimes quantitative data also we get through questionnaires. So questionnaires can be a very good tool for getting qualitative data as well.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, if you get a chance for again taking class, could if you are giving a detailed session on the sampling techniques and all, it will be grateful, sir.
Yes, 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 yes. I'll be happy to deliver a session on sampling as well. Actually, I was to speak about sampling also, but I think that the time is not sufficient to for me to complete sampling, because it's a very technical thing. You have to understand the various types of sampling, how to create a sample size. As I just indicated, that sampling is only a technique which has been created by researchers world over to justify that you can generalize uh, uh, happening of an event by taking the data from just 100 people, but there is a universe of 1,000 people. So it's only a justification. Sampling technique is only a justification. So, but I think it needs to be done with very ethical concerns, and it needs to be done with a sort of moral responsibility. So, Sajida, I'll be happy to take a session whenever there is a possibility. I will do that.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the fruitful session.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Zenat Merchant.
Yeah.
Sir, I wanted to ask, you gave an example of the mental hospital and the participative technique. So can you please, I have two questions. One is, what is the advantage of that? like you said, you behave like one of them. What is the advantage of that? And second is, can you give one more example of some type of participative method?
Yeah, Zina, that's a wonderful question. So, in case of participative method of observation, you behave like that. When I say you behave like that, I intend to say that you adapt and adopt to their cultural setting. So when you visit a mental institution, you will see patients. Some person would be sitting in its own sort of a space, and some person would be running here and there, and that's how we see it in our television and movies also. In reality, also it's the same. It's not same. It's similar. And you when you start behaving and you start uh, indulging yourself just like them, they repose their trust and confidence in you. That's the essence, you know now. Because Zenith, there's one more thing that I would like to speak as a researcher, and as a human being. I don't think that there is somebody called mad person or insane person. This is my personal opinion. I do not want anyone to follow it, but I do not believe that anybody is mad or insane. It's created. It's an institution which has been created by the world, and we have created this category of normal versus abnormal. So it's always, and if you want to study them and you are going to study that institution, you cannot be behaving like a normal when you are studying an abnormal which you yourself have created. You have kept them as mental patients in that hospital. If you go as a very normal person, the which they will consider as alien, they will never give you any information or data which will be relevant for you. So that is what I meant when I say you behave like them. Another example is like that of tribals I gave. If you go to a tribal population, if you go to a tribal area, you share, you listen to them, listen to their stories, you adopt their customs. So this, and similarly you start consuming, for example, if they are eating a particular type of rice, while you see them, if they are eating a particular type of water, they have their own ways of creating their food. You sit with them, you eat with them, you drink with them, you sleep with them. Every sort of cultural setting that is practiced in that environment, you do that. And that's how you gain their trust, and that's how you can get the most relevant data for your research. I hope
Yes,
I'm
I
able
wanted,
to.
yes, sir, very satisfactory. So I wanted to know what exactly, like in the mental hospital, we give an example. What would we try to find out? An example of a hypothesis or something, like when we become
All right.
participative
All right. So it
taking.
depends upon what you are thinking. So, for example, just like you study the behavior of prison inmates, all right, just like you study the demands of. I have been to both the prisons and hospitals. They both are one typical institution. So, if you go to a mental institution, maybe you would be willing to study the health conditions of the hospital inmates, whether proper facilities are being provided by the mental institutes or not, and how are they responding to those facilities? Are they willing to use those facilities? They are all subject of research.
Like a stimulus response type of.
Yes. Rightly pointed. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other question?
Uh, yes. Am I audible?
Yes. Dr. Jitendra, I can. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I listened to you, and you have given very good deliberation. My question is, sir, though I mean, you discuss right now about, I mean, jail inmates are, suppose I went to there for some, to know some criminal psychology. I mean,
Right.
those who are criminals like. So
Right.
suppose if I have questions, whether it is structured or unstructured, and I go to interview them, uh, don't you think many a times they are warned and they know, I mean, they are alert. So how to deal with this?
Yes. So
This is
I
my,
just. Yes. It's a very good question, Dr. Jitendra. That's why I suggested that in settings like these, prisons or hospitals, we do not actually enter into adopting tools of questionnaires or interviews, because they are, as you rightly pointed out, they are warned, and more importantly, they know that we are an outsider. So that's why I suggested that you many a times There are very good researchers world over who have done prison studies, and they have gone to prisons and they have stayed in prisons, obviously with the permission of the commissioners and the states and the state. So the best way is to be participant, to become like them, to, as I said, to stay in their surrounding and then observe. Because if you stay with them, that's how you will get the real data. But yes, I will answer your question also. If you want to interview them, I will share with you my experience of interviewing prison inmates in one of the jails in Odisha, uh, Cuttack district of Odisha specifically. And obviously, if you go to Odisha, it's first of all you have a language barrier, because Odia is spoken, and then it's not only language. There are different dialects that are followed in Odisha, and it's a very culturally rich state, Odisha. If you And when I went, and it was not only me. There were 2 3 people along with me who went to that prison, that jail of Cuttack, Odisha. You First of all, I had to learn myself. I had to learn few sentences of Odia to be able to communicate with them. So you will have to first understand what are the barriers that those respondents or those prison inmates will face, and if you know those barriers, you will have to adapt those barriers on in your own. So even though I was not an Odia, I had no prior information about how Odia is spoken, but still I had to learn some Odia, and I had to communicate. That way they became very comfortable. That way they became very comfortable in answering my questions.
Mr. Ajay Kumar, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying that way I could communicate with them, and they were able to answer my questions. So obviously they did not answer my questions completely because they knew that I was an outsider, but they still felt comfortable. So that's how you do it. That's how you do
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
it. Any other question? Okay, I think Dr. Faiza, I think it's we are
Yes,
done
sir.
with the questions, and I would just like to thank you for calling me for this session. And it was a wonderful questions asked in the end. And I think I can see Professor Pratik also waiting for his session. And
Yes, sir.
I would like to just extend my best wishes to Professor Pratik for his session, and would be waiting for the feedback of my session as well. I would really love to hear the feedback. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thanks a lot, sir. Sir, you have shared so much knowledge with us, and I really thank you that you spared your valuable time for us. You shared the data collection techniques. So from your discussion, it is quite clear that selection of correct technique for data collection will really help us in getting better set of responses. So your valuable knowledge will surely help all of us in achieving our academic as well as professional goals. Thank you, sir. So you spared your valuable time for us, and you have graced the occasion. Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Now it's time for our second technical session, and we have with us a person who is a scientist. He is a professor, he is a counselor, he is a global educator, sir is an author and international speaker. He is Professor Dr. Pratik Rajan Mungekar. Sir is the first Indian to be appointed as Planetary Minister of Sustainable Development of newly emerging the Kingdom of Atlantis. He is the first youngest Indian whose books are studied as a part of Atlantean education program. He has taught more than 8,000 students and had guided more than 12,000 students in making their career. Sir is the visiting faculty in many national and foreign universities. The list is endless, and it is pertinent to mention that Sir has worked as Vice Chancellor in Unified Theological Seminary, USA, University of Kingdom of Atlantis, Singapore, Webster University, Zimbabwe, Wisdom University, Gombe, Nigeria. Now, without taking any more time, I request Sir, Professor Dr. Pratik Rajan, to kindly share his valuable experiences and knowledge with all of us. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Faida ma'am, for your kind introduction. Today, I'm going to discuss qualitative research methods, types, examples, and analysis. And before that, I would take pleasure to throw some light on what is research, basically. So we'll begin with what is research. So research is an activity that leads us to finding new facts, information, assisting us in verifying the available knowledge and in making us question things that are difficult to understand as per existing data. To be successful manager or researcher or educator, it is important for you to know how to go about making the right decisions by being knowledgeable about the various steps involved in finding solutions to problematic issues. So research is a continuous activity in majority of disciplines and professions. It is helpful in critical assessment of the way we work, execute policies, and give instructions in our professions. Research is also a systematic observation of processes to 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 find better ways to do things and to reduce the effort being put in to achieve an objective and identifying the validity of the targets. And in fact, research is a subconscious activity that we are involved in all times, whether it is purchase of daily use articles, a car, electronic good, or planning a holiday. So research basically is a process to discover new knowledge, to find answers to a question. The word research has two parts. Re, re, that means again, and search means find. So again, find, that is what is called research, which denote that we are taking up an activity to look into an aspect once again, or we want to look for some new information about something. Example, front office executive has to learn about facilities, or technician, or some researcher wants to know about some facilities, the timings, key features of drugs, medicinal molecules, products, and services available at the laboratory or the research lab or any institute. If one wants to become a wonderful, professional research associate, other than being a sort of host. So all progress is born of inquiry. Doubt is often better than overconfidence, for it leads to inquiry, and inquiry leads to invention. And this is a famous, put some magazine in context of which the significance of research can well be understood. So Clifford Woody, he was a great philosopher, states that research. I'll tell you the next slide. Okay. Clifford Woody states that research comprises defining and redefining problems, formulation of hypotheses, collection, organizing, and evaluation of data, and reaching conclusions. So here, all research has to be systematic, logical, to arrive at expected outcome. There are many scientists who have done research on research, typical research concept, and the manipulation of things, concepts, or symbols for the purpose of generalizing to explain, correct, or verify knowledge, whether that knowledge aids in construction of theory or in the practice of an art. The authors have a different view of research, as they suggest that it can be taken up by modifying, challenging, and changing available knowledge also, either to prove a process being appropriate or to develop it in entirely. Example, a standard recipe to prepare a particular dish may be modified by an enterprising chef to introduce the dish in a new taste, flavor, or aroma by using a different method of cooking, or by twisting the combination of spices used in the original recipe. So at the same time, the, the chef may create entirely new dish with the use of same ingredients. As per another school of thought, research has to undertake under defined parameters, and it should satisfy you know uh, it should satisfy the conditions if you want to term the process as research activity. So this ascertains adherence to three criteria. That research first is undertaken by making a framework within certain philosophies. So philosophy here means approach. Example, qualitative, quantitative, and the academic discipline in which you have been trained, assessing and finalizing the team size of pre-opening some institute, university, hotel, is quantitative, but developing the prerequisites, job specification and job descriptions to hire trained professionals may be termed as qualitative. So also simply specifying number of participants and time constraints in a cross-country race is quantitative, but defining winning criteria like fairness, completion of race, assisting a fellow participant in trouble, following the rules and regulations, not taking assistance on the way are qualitative aspects. So this is first criteria. Second is makes use of procedure, methods, and techniques that have been tested for their validity and reliability. Please don't change the slides. Okay, I'll tell you when time comes. Okay, go on the first slide, please. Thank you. So the second criteria is make use of procedures, methods, and techniques that have been tested for their validity and reliability. So validity means that correct procedures have been applied to find answers to a question. If a large plot of land has to be measured, the result should be same whether we use a meter scale or measuring tape once we put the values of tape. So in the formula being used to calculate the yield. So reliability refers to the quality of a measurement procedure that provides repeatability and accuracy. So this is understood by the example of preparing the bill of purchase using a software which has inbuilt details of taxes and charges levied, and the formulas to be used and a format in which it would be printed. So this ensures that all the bills shall have values calculated as per standards. So this is one example. And the third criteria has been planned to be unbiased and objective. Unbiased and objective means that you have taken each step in unbiased manner and drawn each conclusion to the best of your ability and without introducing your own vested interest. So bias is deliberate attempt to either conceal or highlight something. Thus, the researcher doesn't change or attempt to change the procedure as per his or her understanding of facts and information. However, the degree to which these criteria are expected to be fulfilled varies from discipline to discipline, and so meaning of research differs from one academic discipline to the another. Now, next slide, please. Now, the research may have, so this is about research, the term research. Now, the research may have certain other qualities, such as it is pre-arranged, structure, inquiry, a formal step-by-step method or sequence to take up research activity, and is developed to ensure correctness of data and validity processes. Scientific methods consist of systematic observation, classification, and interpretation of data. The degree of formality, rigorousness, then verifiability and general validity of scientific methods establish the results obtained. Then it utilizes acceptable scientific methodology to solve problems. The method used should be able to give repetitive results under similar conditions. Then it should create new knowledge that is generally applicable. The outcome should be such that they are not specific to particular issue or a situation, but need to be generalized and generalized for application to comparable issues. So it is a creative process to develop better understanding of mankind, social and cultural and economic issues, and it should be useful to others who wish to apply the findings in developing new policies or applications of findings of research in the benefit of public. Next slide, please. Okay. So how to ensure a good quality research? First, purpose should be clearly defined. Second, common concepts should be used that can be understood by all. Third, research procedures should be explained in detail. Fourth, research design should be carefully planned. Fifth point, researcher should declare all the possible errors and their possible impacts on findings. Sixth, analysis of data should be sufficiently adequate to reveal significance. Seventh, the methods of analysis should be appropriate. And point number 8, the validity and reliability, as I discussed earlier also, of the data should be checked carefully. Point number 9, the researcher should good command over research methodologies and should be intelligent and experienced. And the last point, ethics in research refers to a code of conduct of behavior while conducting research. So ethical conduct applies to the organization and the members that sponsor the research, and the researchers who undertake the research, and the respondents who provide them with the necessary data. So these are, the points to ensure a good quality research. Now, next slide, please. Okay. So here comes qualitative research methods. So a phrase that comes into mind when you want to get inside your customers' heads to understand their thoughts and feelings. So clearly, numbers will not provide a complete picture. So if you want to understand people's perceptions, beliefs, and emotions. For example, suppose you own a bakery and want to know why the sale of pancakes is more than pastries. So you cannot determine this with surveys and questionnaires, which is qualitative data that will provide you with all sorts of numerical data. So the best solution, in this scenario is to interview people and ask them what they like in pancakes, what they do not like in pastry, etc. So accordingly, mold your offering to increase your sales of pastries. Okay, so qualitative research involves obtaining deep insight into why people behave the way they do. There are different methods to conduct qualitative research. So in this particular lecture, we will highlight the top qualitative research methodology with examples and how you can analyze qualitative data. So let's start. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is qualitative research? So qualitative research is a branch of market research that involves collecting and analyzing qualitative data through open-ended communication. The primary purpose of conducting this particular qualitative research is to understand the individual thoughts, feelings, opinions, and reasons behind these emotions. So it is to gather in depth and reach insights into a particular topic. Understanding how your audience feels about a specific subject helps make informed decision in research. As opposed to quantitative research, qualitative research does not deal with the collection of numerical data for statistical analysis. And the application of this research method is, usually found in humanities and social science subjects like sociology, history, anthropology, health science, education, etc. Now the types of, next slide please, types of qualitative research methods with example. So qualitative research methods are designed to understand the behavior and perception of the target audience about a particular subject. So qualitative research methods include observations, like previous speakers has thoroughly explained, one-on-one interviews, case study research, focus groups, ethnographic research, then phenomenology, and grounded theory. So let's discuss them one by one. So first is observations. So observation is one of the oldest qualitative methods of research used to collect systematic data using subjective methodologies. So it is based on 5 primary sense organs: smell, sight, taste, touch, and hearing, and their functioning. I again repeat. So this is based on 5 primary sense organs: smell, sight, taste, touch, and hearing, and their function. So this method focuses on characteristics and qualities rather than numbers. So the qualitative observations techniques involve observing the interaction patterns in a particular situation. So researchers collect data by closely watching the behaviors of others, and they rely on their ability to observe the target audience rather than communicating with people about their thoughts on a particular subject. For example, a researcher observing kids' behavior in a private school for his research, he may watch and record things like how kids interact with each other, how comfortable they are sharing their tiffin, which class they enjoy the most. So that is about observation. Now, second is one-on-one interviews. So conducting one-on-one interviews is the most common type of qualitative research method. It involves open-ended conversation between researchers and participants related to a particular subject. So this method is used to gather in-depth qualitative data for the research purpose. So here, the researcher asks predetermined questions to the participants to collect specific information about their research topic, and interviews can be conducted via face-to-face, email or phone, video conference, and the drawback of this method is that sometimes the participants feel uncomfortable sharing honest answers with the researcher. So this is one-on-one interviews. Example, a business can conduct a structured interview with its target audience to understand the attractiveness of their product before expanding their operations to the global level. So this is, I can say, example of this particular type, one-on-one interviews. Now, third is focus groups. A focus group involves collecting quantitative data by conducting a group discussion of 6 to 12 members along with a moderator related to a particular subject. So here the moderator asks respondents a set of predetermined questions so that they can interact with each other and form a group discussion. So it helps researchers to collect rich qualitative data about their market research. So, however, it is essential to ensure that the moderator asks open-ended questions like how, what, why, and that will enable participants to share their thoughts and feelings. Close-ended questions like yes and no should be avoided as they do not lead to engagement among participants. For example, suppose a software company wants to test a new feature of its product before launching it in the market. So in this case, they will conduct a focus group by choosing a sample group from its target audience, and the group will discuss the product's new feature, and the researcher will collect data based on how they react to the new feature and make the decision accordingly. So this is about focus groups. Next type is case study research. This is popular. A case study research or a case study is another example of qualitative research that involves a comprehensive examination of a particular subject, person, or event. So this method is used to obtain in-depth data and complete knowledge of the subject. So the data is collected from various sources like interviews and observation to supplement the conclusion. So this qualitative approach is extensively used in the field of social sciences, law, business, and health sciences, etc. So many companies use this technique when marketing their products, services to new customers, and it tells them how their business offerings can solve a particular problem. So let's discuss one example of this method of qualitative research. Businesses can use case studies to show their business solutions effectively, and when they introduce any new product in the market, it will help customers identify how the brand's offering can solve a particular problem for the subject. So this is about case study. Next is ethnography. So ethnography is a descriptive type of qualitative research that deals with people and their culture. So this method aims to study individuals' behavior in their natural habitat. Here, the researcher lives with the target audience, acts as an observer, and gets involved with their environment. By doing so, they get first-hand experience of motivation, goals, challenges, their lifestyle, culture, and tradition of the individuals. So the ethnographic model is a social science model used in anthropology to study remote cultures and smaller communities within any particular region. So this qualitative technique is a time-taking process, and as it can take days to years to complete the research, and also geographical constraints can be an issue while collecting data. Example of this method, a simple example of ethnographic this qualitative methodology is when a researcher travels to a remote village to live with the society for years to research village people and their culture. So this comes under ethnography method. Next method is grounded theory. So grounded theory is another data collection method of qualitative research used across various disciplines. So this method aims to provide the reasons, theories, and explanations behind an event. So it focuses on why a course of action has happened the way it did. So the grounded theory model collects and analyzes the data to develop new theories about the subject. So the data is collected using different techniques like observation, literature, review, and document analysis. So this qualitative method is majorly used in particularly business for conducting user satisfaction surveys to explain why a customer purchases a particular product or service, and it helps companies in managing customer loyalty. I purposely and deliberately designed this lecture because research has many dimensions actually. Okay, and research is not the thing which we scientists do in our laboratories. Anyone can do research anywhere, whether it is business, whether small village, college, university, anywhere if you have creativity, if you have curiosity, you can do research. Okay, and more, uh, more, one word which I'm in love with, that word, that is innovation. So coming back to this example of this grounded theory, the for example, the HR department of an organization may use grounded research to determine why employees lack motivation in their work. Or HR can gather data by conducting grounded theory research, determining the root cause of the problem, uh, and offering solutions. So this is grounded theory. And next is phenomenology. Now, this phenomenology is another qualitative research example that describes how an individual experiences or feels about a particular event. It also explores the experience of a specific event in a community. So here, the researcher interviews people who have experienced a particular event to find similarities between their experiences. So the researcher can also record what they learn from the target audience to maintain the credibility of the data. Although this qualitative technique depends majority on interview and other data collection methods like observation, interviews, and survey questionnaires are also used to supplement the findings. The application, the use of this method is found in psychology, philosophy, and in our education also. Let's take one example of this phenomenology qualitative research technique. Would be when a researcher undertakes a study to determine why students prefer to join online courses and the reasons behind the increase in popularity of online courses. So the process of qualitative data analysis usually remains the same regardless of the data collection methods, and that is one-to-one interviews or focus groups. So there are steps you need to follow to conduct this qualitative data analysis. In qualitative data analysis, the first step is arranging the data. And can I have my next slide, please? Yes. So these are the data analysis methods. So arranging the data, organizing the data, assessing or assigning codes, analyzing the data, summarizing the data. So I'll explain each one. So first, in qualitative data analysis, first is arranging the data. So qualitative data is collected in different forms like audio recordings, video recordings, interviews, video transcriptions, etc. So this step involves arranging all the collected data in the text format and in the spreadsheet. So this can be done either manually or with the help of data analysis tools. Next is organizing the data. So even after putting the data into spreadsheet, the data is still messy and hard to read. So due to this, the data needs to be organized in a readable and understandable pattern. For example, you can organize database on questions asked. So organize your data in such a way that it appears visually clear. So data organization can be tedious, but it is essential for the next step. Next is assigning codes. So developing codes for the data helps simplify the data analysis methods in qualitative research. So assigning codes implies categorizing and setting patterns and properties to the collected data. It also helps in compressing the vast amount of information collected, and by developing codes for your data, you can gather deep insight into the data to make informed the decisions, whether it is in business or in education or in research. Next is analyzing the data. So qualitative data cannot be analyzed based on some universally accepted equation like quantitative data. So qualitative data analysis depends on the thinking and logical skill of the researcher. However, there are a few techniques by which you can easily interpret data by identifying themes and patterns between sampled responses. So checking the data for repetitive words and phrases commonly used by the audience in their answer, comparing the primary and secondary data collection to find the difference between them, scanning the data expected information but has not been included in answers provided by respondents, like that. Next is summarizing the data. So the final stage, this is the final stage, is to link the qualitative data to the hypothesis. So highlight significant themes, patterns, and trends by using essential codes from the data as well as any possible contradictions. So one of the main things about qualitative data is that there is not single formal way to collect and analyze data. So each research project will have its own set of methods and techniques, and that it needs to use. So the key is to look at the specific needs of each project and change the research method accordingly. Next slide, please. So these are the advantages of qualitative research methods. So qualitative market research techniques offer a more comprehensive and complete picture of the subject than quantitative research, which focuses on specific and narrow areas. Other advantages of using qualitative research methods are, explore the subject in depth. Now, what do you mean by explore the subject in depth? So qualitative research is personal and offers a deep understanding of the respondents' feelings, thoughts, and actions so that the researcher can perform an in-depth analysis of the subject. Promotes discussion. Qualitative research methods are open-ended in approach rather than rigorously following a predetermined set of questions, and it adds context to the research rather than just numbers. So next is more flexibility. The interviewer can study and ask questions on the subject they feel is pertinent or had not previously thought about during the discussion. So moreover, open-ended questions enable respondents to be free to share their thoughts, leading to more information and capture trends as they change. So qualitative research can track how people's feelings and attitudes change over time. So respondents, opinions can change during the conversation, and qualitative research can show this. Now, next slide, please. So this slide is about qualitative research methods versus quantitative research methods. So in simple words, quantitative research methods, next slide please. Hello, next slide please. No, the chart one. Yeah, okay. So in simple words, quantitative research methods are all about numbers and measurements, and in contrast, qualitative approaches talk about people's opinions and the reason behind those opinions. So qualitative research is holistic in nature, and its primary purpose is to get a deep understanding of the opinions, behavior, and thoughts of the target audience in an open way. So it enables the researcher to engage with respondents in a flexible way instead of asking them a set of predetermined questions. So in the same way, respondents can also discuss the subject openly, which helps the researcher collect rich information and suggest a final course of action. On the other hand, quantitative research is particularistic in nature, and here numbers guide decisions and data is analyzed using statistical analysis. So qualitative research methods help gain an initial understanding of the subject that deals in figures like how many people are likely to buy your product and services. So it's easy to get swamped by the amount of information on qualitative research available online. There are lots of articles research papers about qualitative research methods often use, complex and academic language and dance around the details of how to use these methods in your projects. So now I'm going to share, there are other methods also. uh, I, I, I will try my best to explain this method in a very simple form. So next slide, please. Okay, so these are the methods. First is card sorting. Now, this a card sorting is a qualitative research method used to help determine the relative priority of features, categories, or pages. So in card sorting session, the participant is given small cards with a single word or short phrase on each one. So they are asked to rank the cards in priority order or group them together and label the group. For example, a simple card sorting session might involve a list of features like search, notifications, dashboard, activity feed, photos, and so on. So the participants might be asked to rank each feature in priority order in terms in terms of what matters most to you. So card sorting is also used to help design or evaluate the information architecture of a site. What you will be doing: recruiting, running the session, note taking, recording, analyzing. Okay, now for this method, there are so many tools like index cards or optimal sort, pen and paper. These are the tools. And participants requirement is 5 to 20 participants. Time requirement is, usually it takes 15 to 60 minutes each. And for preparation analysis, it will take 4 hours. So this is card sorting method. Now next is case studies method, which I discussed earlier also. I will discuss much in detail. So a case study, is an up close, in-depth, and detailed examination of a subject of study, or you can say the case, as well as its related contextual conditions. So case studies are very broad and can take a variety of different forms. So in user research, a case study is often a report detailing how someone at a specific company uses the software, or it includes information like their role, a description of a typical day, and demographic details, along with information on the firm or company. So case studies go into detail about the subject's relationship with the software, what they like and dislike, and case study also often include quotes from the subject. So in case studies, what you will be doing? So in case studies, recruiting, interviewing, note taking, recording, and analyzing. Okay, for this case study method, to what tools you can use? So there are so many tools like audio recorder, camera, video recorder, pen, paper, or Calendly, or Dovetail. These are the suggested tools which you can use for case studies. And generally, in case study method, uh, minimum 1 to maximum 10 participants participant requirement is there. Time is 2 hours per participant, and preparation analysis 4 hours, 4+ hours. Next method is co-design. So co-design is an approach to design attempting to actively involve all stakeholders. Example: employees, partners, customers, citizens, end users. So in the design process to help ensure the results meets their needs and is usable. So co-design sessions are similar to focus groups in that they involve multiple participants working together at once, and however they are different in that they are usually highly interactive and hands-on, rather than being a back and forth question and answer session. So in user research, co-design sessions often involve a sketching and wireframing with both designers and end users of the what I can say, software. So in this method also, you know, in co-design also, what you will be doing is recruiting, running the session, note taking, recording, analyzing. Suggested tools for this method is audio recorder, camera, pen, paper, whiteboard, then dovetail, calendly. Participants range is 3 to 10. Time is 1 to 3 hours, and for preparation and analysis it will take 8 hours. Okay, so next method is competitor analysis. A competitor analysis is simply an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of the competition. So user researchers use competitive analysis as a method to evaluate similar software products and see how they solve the problem or design specific features. So familiarity with an interface is an important factor in usability. So employing design patterns and paradigm present in other related software is also important, and the competitor analysis is a good way to take note of the design patterns in other products. So in this also, in competitor analysis, you will be finding the evaluating competitors, then analyzing, note making, etc. And the tools you can use for this analysis is Google search or Dovetail. Participants not required here. Okay. For preparation analysis, it will take 2 hours. So this is about this competitive analysis. Now, next is contextual inquiries. So research often takes place in the researcher's environment. For example, participants might visit your office for a usability test or a contextual inquiry and a contextual interview. So is a qualitative research method where the researcher observes or interview a participant in the course of their normal activities in their own environment. For example, a contextual inquiry might involve visiting a customer's office and seeing how their users interact with your software, or visiting a hospital or a school or a university or a college and observing doctors or students. So in this method, what you will be doing: planning, recruiting, scheduling, note-taking, recording, analyzing, etc. Suggesting this method is, video, audio recorder, camera, pen, paper, dovetail, calendly. Participants 1 to 10. Time required 2 to 3 hours for this method, and for preparation analysis, it will take 6+ hours. Then comes focus groups. So focus group, which I discussed earlier also, but this is quite popular in the business and development. So focus groups are like interviews, except rather than being one-on-one. Focus groups are conducted with a group of demographically diverse people. Questions are asked in an interactive group setting where participants are free to talk with other group members, and these focus groups are often used in market research and political research also, but they are heavily criticized in the user research community for their problems with observer bias, tendencies towards group or vocal participants dominating the discussion and serving as a means to appease stakeholders, etc. So Apple's Johnny said focus groups ensure that you don't offend anyone and produce bland, inoffensive products. So if you still want to run a focus group, what you will need is recruiting, running the session, note-taking, recording, analyzing. Suggested tools: same, camera, audio recorder, calendly, dovetail. Participants range from 5 to 15 participant. Time, focus groups usually take 1 to 3 hours, and for preparation analysis it will take more than 12+ hours. Next come grounded theory. Grounded theory is a systematic methodology in the social sciences involving the construction of theory through methodic gathering and analysis of data. And basically this theory, which I discussed earlier also, but now I'm discussing from this different aspect, and this is a qualitative research method that starts from scratch. So a grounded theory approach starts with a single question about a topic the researcher knows nothing about. For example, what makes a couple remarry after divorce? Like that. So the researcher then collects data, analyzes using coding, learns more, and repeats. So grounded theory is used heavily in social sciences and academia, but due to its time-consuming nature, this was the disadvantage, is not used often in commercial user research. So in this method also, what you will be doing, asking question, collecting data, analyzing with codes, reporting, suggested tools or any tool you can use for this. And participants varies, time varies, and preparation analysis also varies on the case or the whatever the research you want to do. Then comes persona development. A persona is a fictional character that is a realistic representation of someone in your audience. So personas have a name, an appearance, opinions, emotions, and demographic data like location, job, income, etc. So personas are used as a method in qualitative user research to help focus decisions by adding a layer of real world consideration to the conversation. So they also offer a quick and inexpensive way to test and prioritize features throughout development. Personas are created based on real user research using the methods, what you will be doing in this, researching, analyzing data, and creating personas. Suggested to, these tools are very common in all those processes like audio recorder, camera, pen, paper, dovetail. Participant range from 5 to 10 participants. They can do collaborative research. Time required, depends on the methods used. And for preparation analysis, it will take more than 12 plus hours. Now, the structured interview. What is structured interview? So one of the most common qualitative research methods, especially in commercial setting, structured interviews are interviews with a participant where the set of questions, the wording of questions, and the order of questions are consistent between each interview. The structured interview are considered a means by which researchers can increase the reliability and credibility of their research data. Structured interviews are a straightforward way to collect high quality research data without the time consuming aspects of other qualitative research methods. So in this particular structured interview method, what you will all be doing: planning, scheduling, taking notes, analyzing. Suggested tool is Calendly and Dovetail, and participants required 6 to 12. Time is 30 to 90 minutes per interview, and preparation analysis 3+ hours. So there are so many techniques, there are so many methods, and the newly discovered methods in this qualitative method research. Next is surveys. A survey is a list of questions aimed at extracting specific data from a particular group of people. So questions can result in quantitative data. Example, a single choice, multiple choice, Likert scale, or qualitative data. In qualitative data, open-ended questions. So surveys are often used in market and user research to determine thoughts, feelings, and opinions from a sample of people. So the design of your questions and the relevance of respondents greatly affect the quality of your data. However, creating effective surveys is an enormous topic that we will not try to cover here because we have a time constraint. So surveys are a frequently used qualitative research method, and in this method, what you all be doing is creating a survey, finding people, analyzing responses, etc. For this survey method, you can use Typeform or Dovetail tools, and participant range is from 20 to 1,000 plus participants. They can participate in this survey method. Time surveys typically take 5 to 30 minutes to complete, and preparation analysis is approximately 2+ hours. Next is unstructured interviews. So unstructured interviews are similar to structured interviews. However, they follow a looser format. The set of questions, wording, and order may vary dramatically between each interview. So unstructured interviews are more like a free flowing conversation, and such they are more prone to go down rabbit holes. So, however, due to their relaxed nature, it might be easier to get truthful information out of a participant. So in this unstructured interview method, what you all be doing is planning, scheduling, taking notes, analyzing. Same suggested tool, also same Calendly and Dotel you can use. Participant requirement is 1 to 12 and time requirement is 15 to 16 minutes per interview. For preparation, it will take 3+ hours. Next is usability testing. Now, usability testing, also known as user testing, and is used to measure the ease of use of software user interface or a product. So it's a form of systematic observation focusing on measuring a human-made product's capacity to meet its intended purpose. Examples of products that commonly benefit from this usability testing are food, consumer products, websites or web applications, then computer interfaces, documents, and devices. So participants are given a task to achieve and are observed trying to complete the task. So the testing session can range from rigorous, like taking place in a lab setting, to fast and dirty, which is sometimes called hallway testing or guerrilla testing. So in this particular method, what you all be doing is planning, scheduling, testing, recording, taking notes, analyzing, and suggested tools for this is Look Back, Dovetail, Envision, Sketch, Calendar. These are the tools which we generally use for usability testing. Participant requirement range is from 5 people to 20 participants. Time requirement is 30 to 60 minutes, and preparation and for this preparation analysis, it will take 8+ hours. So these all are, qualitative research methods. In my previous lecture, I thoroughly explained the scientific qualitative research method. In this particular lecture, I've tried to cover the basic qualitative research method also, and from business point of view, from market point of view, also I have covered all these qualitative research methods. So I hope you all are enjoyed, and I would like to congratulate the Dr. Shailaja for inviting me here, and also the college. Sorry, I forgot the college name. Just a moment.
It's Government SPMR College of Commerce.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. So I would like to extend my deep gratitude to this college, their faculties, all the staff, student, and all the fellow colleagues who constantly are and patiently listening to me this very exhaustive, I must say, talk. And thank you so much. And one more request, pardon me, because now one award ceremony is going on in United Kingdom, Scotland, and I'm one of the awardee. I'm receiving this prestigious Sustainable Development Medal from United Kingdom, Scotland company. So I would take pleasure to join that meeting, and if anyone, any participant, student, faculty, researcher has any doubt regarding this particular topic, I am just sharing my email ID in the chat box, or I can, okay, I'm just sharing my email ID. They can email me whatever the question they have. I will try to answer each and every question as soon as possible. Okay, please, so sorry.
Thank you, sir. Sir, first of all, congratulations to you for the award.
Because they are waiting. The award ceremony starts at 2 p.m. UK time, which is 7. Okay, but since I am, here, so they are. I just called from Mr. Pari. Okay, so I'm just sharing my email address for any questions, queries. They can email me, and surely that's my promise. I will answer each and every question. So,
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with various aspects of quality research.
okay, my just a minute. My email address is pratik mungekar 95 @gmail.com. I have just shared my email address in the chat box, and please, admin or the moderator, to share my email address with each and every participant. And once again, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, any participant, if you want to say something about today's event, can please come forward. Okay, I request everyone to please turn on their camera so that we can take a good photograph. Thank you, everyone. Well, the time has come to conclude today's event. Respected Principal Sir Dr. Surinder Kumar, Dr. Pooja, Convener FTP and Coordinator Research and Development Cell of the College, Professor Deepshika Sharma, Organizing Secretary, members of Cape Town, Cape Comorin Trust, India, resource persons of today's event, Mr. Utkarsh Mishra and Dr. Pratik Rajan, my colleagues and all the participants. Good evening, everyone. I, Dr. Jagmeet Kaur, on behalf of Government SPMR College of Commerce, Jammu and Cape Comorin Trust, India, would take this opportunity to thank to all present here for great response towards the event. I extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Surinder Kumar, Principal, Government SPMR College of Commerce, Jammu, whose untiring effort has made our college a center of excellence. We are highly grateful for his guidance and support. I would also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Pooja, Convener FTP, and Professor Deepshika, Organizing Secretary, whose hard work has converted the proposed idea into reality and who always stand by us and motivate us. I'm also grateful to resource person of first technical session, Mr. Utkarsh Mishra. Sir has very rightly said that data is the backbone of any research. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with various aspects of data collection, particularly interview method and questionnaire method. I am also very much thankful to resource person of second technical session, Dr. Pratik Rajan, who very well explained about various quality of research, qualitative research methods such as observation, ethnography research, case study research, grounded theory, along with their advantages and so on, through a well-designed presentation. Thank you, sir, for your contribution. My special thanks to the member of Cape Comorin Trust for their unflinching support, dedications, and coordination. At last, I would thank all the participants. If time is money, then today all of you have spent millions for us. Thanks to all for making this event highly interactive and a memorable one. Thank you everyone.